There are 4 ingredients every high growth business needs. Without them, you have no clarity, you have no differentiation, you have no leadership. But with them, you have a business that will pretty much grow automatically. You won't be pushing it to growth. No, you will be riding it to growth. Now look, I've helped some of the world's greatest brands with their strategies, and today I'm going to help you by creating your own 4-part strategy stack with these ingredients in just the same way. And at the end, I'm going to give you a tip to check your thinking, or maybe the thinking of your colleague or the thinking of your boss, to make sure that it is really sharp. Right, first ingredient. It's the most important one because it guides all of the others in this recipe, in this stack. And it pretty much boils down to the most fundamental question you can ask about any business. And let me tell you, when I go and ask a CEO or something this question, you should see the panic that comes into their eyes, even though it is a question that everyone should be able to answer instantly. What is this business for? What does it do? What is the point of it? Seems simple, doesn't it? But most people never ask such a basic question, and this is fatal because if you think about it, what the business does is by far the #1 determinant over whether or not that business is going to succeed. People worry so much about whether they do things well. They never really question about what are they doing in the first place. Now, if your business does something extremely valuable and unique, well, it's going to make loads of money. This is why Nvidia is the world's most valuable company, right? Because they have the monopoly on something that people want. It's not rocket science. But if your business does something really common and trivial, like most businesses, I'm afraid, well, then it's going to make very little money and it's going to really have to hustle to make whatever money it's going to make. Now, the biggest problem that most companies have here isn't only that their business does something low value, that it does something trivial, it's that they aren't even clear on what it is doing at all. So they aren't even able to operate with focus and clarity, even on their bad idea, let alone a good idea. Now you can ask 10 different people in any given business, what does this business really do? And what you're going to find is you're going to get 10 different answers. It's crazy, and people wonder why most businesses aren't very healthy. So here, in this first ingredient, we're not only trying to create leverage, but clarity. So how do we do that? Well, the trick is to focus your answer to this question of what the business does on just 2 words: new value. You need to do something that has high demand, that people want, and that's the value bit of the equation. But crucially, you must also make sure that it has low supply, that it's unique to you, that it is new to the market. Now, I see so many CEOs thinking that they're super smart, saying something like the equivalent of, look, everybody in the world needs socks and we make socks, therefore we've got a great business on our hands. But obviously this is idiotic because you can get socks from all sorts of places. It's new value that you need. Figure out what that is, and then it all flows from there, the rest of this cake that we're baking here, right? So, on to the second ingredient, ingredient number 2. This ingredient is all about 2 things. Firstly, making sure that you actually deliver the value that you are promising with your new value. And second, it's about creating true differentiation from your competitors. So how do you do this? Well, it is simple, with an innovation, or ideally, frankly, multiple innovations. Now look, some people think that innovation is this like concept that only applies to certain subsets of companies, like tech companies or R&D based companies or something like that. But no, every business on the planet, no matter what you do, is by definition in the business of innovation. Now the reason for this is simple. If you don't offer new, unique value, like I said before, then you're a commodity and you won't grow. That's true for all of us. But the only possible way of creating new value is to actually do something new, isn't it? And that new thing you do is by definition an innovation. You must be able to say something like, we are the only business in our category that gives you X, the value. And the reason we're able to do this is because we do Y, the innovation. The Y drives the X, the innovation drives the value. In this way, you simultaneously give value and you separate yourself from competitors in a hard, factual, durable way, not just with a bunch of pretty words, which is basically how most people try to create differentiation. So these first 2 ingredients, right, they basically cover what the business does. You know the new value you're going to bring to the table, and you know the unique thing you're doing, the unique way of operating that's going to deliver it. So what next? Well, now we need to get on to how we communicate this thing. And the most obvious part of that is how we communicate it, obviously, to the customer, which is ingredient number 3, the customer story. Now, I want you to understand something incredibly important here, because so many people miss this. What we've covered so far is an instruction that you give to yourself and to your colleagues and to your business. It is internal. You've read the market, you've noticed, hey, there's an opportunity to deliver new value over here, and you're creating a plan of how to do that. This is not the same thing as the way that you communicate that value to customers. In order to do that, you need to connect that value to a problem that they perceive that they already have, and then present it to them basically as a solution. In other words, you need to make it relevant to their selfish desires. All forms of communication fundamentally are about making things relative to someone's selfish desires. Now, to do this, I recommend you can basically use the Donald Miller StoryBrand framework, which more or less goes something like this. You start by saying, you know how, and then you state a problem or a situation that the customer would recognize and nod along to. And then you say, well, and then you state what your business does and its innovation. And then you finish with, so you, and then you state the improved end state that this is going to leave them with when that problem has been resolved. What you're creating here is the fundamental logic with which you are going to sell. And then you can take this and you can copyright it in a sexy fashion, or you can put it into pitch decks, sales scripts, compress it into social bios, use it in all sorts of ways to market and sell your product. Always, though, with this consistent thread running through it. It's a beautiful thing when you get it so simple, so clear. So you might think now, surely that's it, right? We know what our business is doing, ingredients 1 and 2. We know how to sell it, ingredient 3. What more could possibly be left? That is the whole business, right? Well, actually no. Perhaps the most powerful ingredient of all is the one left, ingredient number 4. Now, you know how we just talked about selling this idea to customers? Well, that's obviously great, but what about everyone who isn't a customer? The press, your partners, your shareholders, your team, even yourself. You've got to sell this thing to yourself as well. You need a way to understand this strategy internally too, one that is simple and memorable, but also incredibly inspiring, and that will motivate people to get on board and help out. Now for this, you need a company story. That's ingredient 4. Think about this as being like the grand myth of your business that lays out where it's come from, what it's trying to do, where it's heading to. The strategy is embedded within this, but when you say it, it's not going to sound like a strategy. It's going to sound like an awesome story and like an awesome call to arms for everybody. So here, you can write this in lots of different ways, but here are the basic beats that I recommend that are pretty reliable. First, start with the origin. Where did this business start? What were its humble beginnings? Just set a bit of a scene. Second, move on to the problem that the business noticed. Not, I stress, not the customer problem, but the problem with the industry that the business is situated within. This is like the absence of the new value that you've created, this gap that you've noticed in the market that, oh, somebody needs to fix this. Third, state your belief about the problem. This is like the fundamental insight or different way of viewing things that you have, which enables you to fix that problem. You saw this thing, you had this idea that no one else in this category had realized. Fourth, state what you're actually going to do about it. And this is basically your innovation, like ingredient 2 that we talked about. The new action that your business took or is going to take in order to fill the gap and resolve the problem. Fifth, state what this means for the customer and why it's good for them that you did this. And this is basically just the positive end state that we delivered in the customer story in ingredient number 3. And then finally, 6th, state what it will mean for the world at large if you are maximally successful with this. If this flies beyond your wildest dreams, how would things change? What parts of the market or society would benefit? This is basically your purpose or your vision, right? It's the grand thing that you're all pushing towards and it's going to put a fire in your belly. When you have this narrative built, we should note, from the fundamental commercial building blocks of your strategy, then you have the thing that will truly move your people and move your business. This is like the step that ties it all together. So to recap, ingredient 1 is the new value your business exists to put into the market. This is about getting leverage and also getting clarity on what the business does. This is like the entire concept that everything that you do is built around. Ingredient 2 is the key innovation that actually delivers that value, that different thing that you do which other companies don't do, which makes it true and which creates proper differentiation from competitors. Ingredient 3 is how you position this for customers and how you sell it to them, the customer story. And ingredient 4 is how you communicate it to the team and to get everyone to love it and to bring everyone with you and to make everyone think, wow, what an awesome company this is, let's go. Right? Just like any recipe. If you miss one of these ingredients, then frankly the dish won't work. It's not going to taste good. These all work in unison and they come together to form an unstoppable strategy. And also, just like any recipe, you want to actually taste it and make sure that it tastes good. And this video right here about the differences between dumb strategy and smart strategy will help you develop that taste and do just that with this strategy you're working on, or frankly anyone. So check that out next.